We're here with the 7th Fleet Commander, Vice Admiral Swift, with current concerns of the curfew policy. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here with you.
Glad you could make a trip down to Sasebo. Not always under such bright terms, but good to have you here nonetheless. And as I understand, every base has concerns. Where there are sailors, obviously there are going to be concerns. What's been the initial reaction you've had concerning this new curfew policy?
The sailors are very concerned about the impact that these policies have had on their day-to-day lives. They're also concerned about how these events that have occurred within our communities, in not just Japan but other countries as well, how these events are defining all of us as 7th Fleet, as sailors, despite the fact that these events are not reflective of who we are.
Something we've done is we've compiled questions from every Navy installation, from the CMCs. They gathered the most frequently asked questions from sailors out there, and one of the ones that concerns a lot of sailors has to deal with this new policy regarding why is it that so many sailors, 40,000 in Japan, are being essentially punished for what has happened to the effect of what only less than 10 sailors have done.
I recognize that the curfew policy does affect all military members in Japan. There's 44,000 sailors that report for duty to me every morning as 7th Fleet sailors beyond Japan. The measures that have been in place, for instance, the Class C Liberty Risk measure, every one of these events that has occurred has involved the abuse of alcohol. Every one of the sailors involved has had multiple alcohol-related issues. So that's why I took the step of going back 3 years to find out what sailors had had an alcohol-related incident. Those are the high-risk sailors. So this isn't about punishing all the sailors. Sailors are not the problem. Sailors are the solution. This is about empowering sailors so that they can become part of the solution. The curfew is a temporary measure to do everything we can to prevent another event from happening so that sailors can get engaged and be that solution that I know they all are.
Now, the incidents that have occurred over the last several weekends aren't anything new that the Navy hasn't dealt with before, but what are the actions taken there? I mean, are we being held to a different standard than they are?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we are being held to a different standard. And who's holding us to a different standard are the communities that we live in. The outrage in the Japanese community is well understood and understandable. I mean, the rape in Okinawa was horrific. This was a crime committed by criminals, yet to be determined, who exactly is responsible. But clearly a crime was committed, and that young woman will carry those burdens of that experience for the rest of her life. So I can understand the outrage, the community outrage. That's our community outrage. And so there is an increased standard and expectation of performance. And I haven't found a sailor yet that thinks that performance is acceptable and pushes back on the standard. I'm convinced that the 44,000 sailors that report for duty every morning to 7th Fleet are up to the task of saying that behavior is not who we are. Now, the measures that we're using to manage those standards, we need to take those back down to where they were before the rape. But that's going to be event and condition-based, not a time-based process.
With this new curfew policy, is it really just shifting the incidents to a more sooner time of the day as opposed to midnight or 1 in the morning?
But I recognize there are those that have said, not just the Liberty Risk process, that now it would force bad behavior because sailors would want to accelerate if you'd had 5 drinks in 10 hours. Now if you only had 5 hours to drink, you're going to cram 10 drinks into that time period. Same thing with not just the curfew piece, but no drinking between 22 and 08. and now everybody's going to binge drink right up to 2200, so they're not breaking the rules. That's not reflective of who 7th Fleet sailors are. That's not reflective of the vast majority of the 44,000 sailors that I talked to. They recognize that these attacks, these events that have occurred, have been attacked on us. We're part of the communities that we live in. And there's an expectation of a higher standard placed on us by our community. And I think we're up to rising to that standard. Yes, there's sacrifices that good sailors are going to have to make in the near term, but I think we're up to it. And we will return to the norm as events and conditions warrant.
Now, it's not just, obviously everyone in Japan knows about the current policy, but it's not just them that are aware of it. It's those in the States or maybe stationed in Europe that are well aware of what's going on in Japan, and maybe they're coming up for orders, and if they see Japan, they might want to avoid that. How will that affect our manning down the road? Maybe not next month, but half a year from now.
It could very well affect our manning. These are temporary measures. Sailors are not the problem. They're the solution. We will work our way through this challenge and return to the same standards that apply to sailors across the Navy. So this is what I would say to a sailor that is looking at the situation as is now and saying, gee, I don't want to go to Japan. Two questions for that sailor. Do you not want to come to Japan because of the challenges of serving overseas? Then perhaps you're not up to the challenge that our sailors in 7th Fleet have embraced. They're up to the challenge. They don't look at this as challenges. They look at this as opportunities. We can lead forward to this. The vast majority of sailors across the force have said, we understand why this is necessary, and we're in. We're up to this challenge. We're accepting this as an opportunity to raise ourselves to a higher level. The world that we live in out here is extremely challenging, but our sailors don't view it as challenges. They view it as opportunities. And they love the leadership opportunities out there. You want to make rate? Come to 7th Fleet. Look at the challenges that you'll be presented here and the opportunities that means for promotion. That's how most sailors are looking at this.
Now, those are all the questions covering that's been gathered from all over the Navy installations throughout Japan. But is there anything that you wanted to address with any sailors or any other service members from other branches? Any concerns that they have, or anything that you want to convey to them?
Yeah, I would say that within 7th Fleet, I have Marines that report for duty to me every morning as well. And the 7th Fleet policy, it can't be just the Japan sailors. We have to look at this as a 7th Fleet challenge and an opportunity for all of us to take on board. And as I said in my message, I know there's going to be negative impacts to all of us that hold ourselves to such high standards that traditionally the Navy has held themselves to. The issue is not you. The issue is not the 7th Fleet sailor. The issue is that those very few among us that think that they don't have to hold themselves to the same standards that we just take for granted on a daily basis. And this is an opportunity for those sailors, for those 44,000 sailors that do such an outstanding job. Much better job, in my view, than any other sailor in any other fleet in the United States Navy, to step up and fill that leadership role that is required to get us through this rough spot, to reassure the communities that we live in that this is an aberration, that these sailors are not reflective of who we are, and return to the norms that were in place before this horrific raid. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to reach out and talk to directly to all those sailors, to the great work that you do here, and to reassure those sailors that I certainly understand the impacts of these policies. I'm mindful that Christmas is just around the corner, that New Year's is just around the corner, and that we will continue to look to return the policies back to where they were. And I'm confident that the sailors in the fleet will be able to create the conditions and the events that are required to reassure the communities that we live in and return to those control measures. So thank you very much.
Well, that'll do it for us here. Reporting from Commander Fleet Activity Sasebo with 7th Fleet Commander Vice Admiral Swift, I'm Petty Officer Kyle Jackson.